Come on, people now. Smile on your brother. Try to get with one another. Try to love one another right now. Yeah, dog. TM is in the chat. First. You are first, TM. You win. What do you win? The pride and joy of being first. That's what you win. Today is Monday, April 14th, 2025. What's up, LB? How you doing, brother? Brother from another mother and another father. Good afternoon, VKM. Or late night for me. What time is it in India right now? Let's see. Dennis is in the house. In Mumbai. I got Mumbai on my world clock on my phone. In Mumbai, it's 11:31 p.m. in Mumbai, if anybody was wondering. Sup, Andrew Zhang? How you doing? How you doing? Who else is in the chat? Say what's up. Say hello. Oh, and Miles Wolf is here. Sup? Come on, people now. Smile on your brother. Coming together. Try to love one another right now. I guess I don't know the lyrics that well. Gang's all here. Kevin Belmont Luna's here. The Lickman legends are all here. No doubt. Smartphones fried. Yeah. We'll get to that in a moment. The titular topic of today. Hello, Dustin. But first, if you've been following my Geoguessr journey, you know that I've been trying to get to the Gold 1 League. And yesterday, if you caught the stream, I was in 6th place, the last spot to be promoted into the Gold 1 League. So today, we're going to find out how I did. I haven't checked yet. This is going to be my honest reaction. Hashtag real reaction to realness. Or something like that. Hello, Zolt. Big heart to you, brother. Come on, brother, now. Come on, people, now. Smile on your brother. I'm in love. I can't remember that third. Let me look at the lyrics real quick. Come on, people, now. Lyrics. Here it is. This is the part I'm singing. Come on, people, now. Smile on your brother. Everybody get together. Try to love one another right now. All right, enough singing. Knicks in 6 over the Pistons. Yes. I wouldn't sleep on the Pistons, but yeah, I think they could get it done in 6. LB says, Bill M, I'm assuming you mean Bill Maher, has become generic and plastic. He's the complete opposite of a truth teller. Chad says, Trump is officially ignoring the SCOTUS decision on the Maryland man. Yeah, you're right. Hello, Lori Robinson. All right, first things first, did I make the Gold League? I'm not going to play Geoguessr, but I just want to know if I made the Gold League. I'm not going to play Geoguessr today. No, I see myself. I'm in 7th. Wait. Nope, I didn't make it. Damn, bro, 7th. I was 1 spot away from the Gold 1 League. God Damn it. Ugh. All right. I'm not playing Geoguessr today. I just wanted to see. Bulls in 7 over the Cavs? You're nuts. Come on. Bill Maher has kissed the ring. Yeah, he kind of have. Boston, easy trip to the finals again. West, I have no idea who wins. Lakers fan, but I have real doubts they can make the finals. Let's see. NBA 2025 playoff bracket. So, this is not 20, that's 2024. Oh, I said 2024. I meant 2025. So, here's my prediction. Let me see if I can get, can I make a prediction? What is this? I just want to be able to select. Okay, here we go. Here's my predictions. So, obviously Thunder. I think Nuggets, Lakers, and this one's tough. I kind of think that Memphis is going to win this game, and then they're going to be pretty well matched up against the Rockets. This one's hard. I'm going to come back to this one. I know everybody's saying Golden State, but I think Memphis with John Morant could have a good run. All right, Cavs, Pacers, Bucks, I'm not sure. Knicks, obviously Celtics. So in the playing games, I'm going to pick Memphis as the 7 and Golden State as the 8. And then the East, what are the playing games for the East? 25 NBA playoff bracket. I don't know. I don't think either of these teams are going to advance. So I don't really care who wins those games. Then I'm going to do something crazy and pick Memphis here. And then I'm going to go Lakers, Thunder, Western Conference Finals. I hate picking the Celtics here. I hate picking the Celtics here. But I'm going to pick the Celtics. I don't think it matters who wins here. I'm going to go Cavs. Then I'm going to go Thunder, Cavs, Thunder. That's my prediction. Here, I'm going to go Pacers, but it depends if Dame Lillard plays or not. This is my 2025 NBA pick'em or playoff prediction. You heard it here first, folks. Jimmy Butler may be hurt. Oops. Yeah, I think this is my prediction. Now it's set in stone. It's on camera. Everybody knows my pick. Does Allan Lichtman like sports? He's like obsessed with sports. Yes. Hello, Suzanne AP. Let's get to the titular topic. So I heard over the weekend that Trump was going to I heard over the weekend that Trump was going to have an exemption for electronics like computers, iPhones. But then today, apparently last night on Sunday, he said that that wasn't the case. So now I'm just confused. Let me see if I can find an article on this. Electronic exemptions. Tariffs are on again, off again. Not only that, they're on again, off again. Maybe it's real, maybe it's not. Like, it's even worse than on again, off again. Okay, here's something. Trump says, Trump says there are no tariff exemptions in his trade war despite electronic exemptions. That's so confusing. Like, could they be more confusing? President Trump on Sunday said there were no exemptions made to his tariff announcement. I really got to block the screen like that. Adding that nobody will see an exemption in his widening trade war. The message posted to Truth Social came after some electronics were excluded from his administration's 145 import levies on goods from China. On Friday, a notice published by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Office said that smartphones, computers, and other electronics are excluded from his administration's tariffs on goods from China. However, those electronics are still subject to a 20% tariff related to fentanyl, according to Stephen Miller. And as reiterated by Trump in his Truth Social post on Sunday. Nevertheless, Wall Street is interpreting the change in tariff rates for electronics as a win for the tech sector, especially Apple, which manufactures most of its iPhones in China. It's just like, that's just so confusing. So I guess what they're saying is so electronics are exempt from the reciprocal tariff, but they're included in the semiconductor tariff, which are coming in probably a month or two. God damn, man. It's just such a mess. Cash Now says Trump is probably confused too. Lori says, I think they purposely confuse Americans. I don't know about that. I think they just don't know what the hell they're doing, honestly. Dennis says, sounds like they use ChatGPT to make the language intentionally confusing. That's hilarious. VKM says, Trump with tariffs is like a mischievous kid ping-ponging between pretending to study when his parents come into the room and playing video games when alone. He only stops when confronted by those with power. That's a beautiful analogy. So Trump said, on Sunday afternoon, President Trump sought to clarify the status of U.S. tariffs on high-tech products from China. Nobody is getting off the hook for unfair trade balances and non-monetary tariff barriers that other countries have used against us, especially not China, which by far treats us the worst. There was no tariff exemption announced on Friday. These products are subject to the existing 20% fentanyl tariff, and they are just moving to a different tariff bucket. Fake news knows this, but refuses to report it. I mean, they're reporting it. This is from Elizabeth Warren. Investors will not invest in the United States when Trump is playing red light, green light with tariffs and saying, oh, and for my special donors, you get a special exemption. That's what it feels like. It feels like red light, green light. It feels like he's like 145% tariff on China, except for electronics. Except electronics will still be 20% tariffed. It's like, geez Louise, man. It does feel like we're like, I mean, it is confusing, but I do get it. Essentially, they're saying that electronics are not part of the 145% reciprocal tariff. They're still part of this 20% tariff that's based on fentanyl, I guess. Firms like Apple, NVIDIA, and Microsoft and the broader tech industry can breathe a huge sigh of relief this weekend into Monday. But they said that on Saturday before Trump came back out. How's the market doing today? Slightly up. 0.7% up on the Dow, 0.8% on the S&P, 0.6%. NVIDIA is down today, though. Ford Motor Company is up pretty big. Apple is up pretty big. Tesla's down. So will our iPhones be saved? The titular question. Maybe? It's looking better than when people thought there would be 145% tariff on them, but there's still a 20% tariff on them. I mean, that's not nothing. That's still going to cost money.
When I started...
I gotta put on my headies. That's probably what Australians call these. Hey, mate, gotta put on my headies.
And welcome back. You're 2 live now from Fox. I'm Andrew Kraft. Let's get into some of these top economic headlines. Remember, we brought you the news yesterday that on Friday night, the Trump administration issued some exemptions for particular products under their sweeping tariff policy, including electronics like computers and smartphones, etc. Well, today on the Sunday Shows, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick made some type of deviation from that. He appeared on ABC News's This Week there with anchor Jonathan Karl. I'm going to put this up here. So This Week says this: after Trump exempts tech like phones, computers, and chips from new tariffs, Howard Lutnick tells Jonathan Karl they will be included in semiconductor tariffs to be released in the coming months. Lutnick saying this is not a permanent sort of exemption. So that is different than what we heard Friday night and Saturday morning. A different line now on this Sunday morning. Well, our colleague there at Fox Business, Charlie Gasparino, tweeting this: a senior Wall Street executive with ties to the Trump White House described Howard Lutnick's comments about the temporary nature of the tariff exemptions as quote unquote off message. So you see that.
And then Trump came out and said that he was right.
There, Gasparino now says the market will open way down again since it appears the administration is totally confused. He says Susie Wiles needs to get control of Lutnick. He is a wrecking ball. That's what a senior Wall Street executive with ties to the Trump White House told Charlie Gasparino. Of course, Susie Wiles is Trump's chief of staff there. Well, the president just posted this on Truth Social. He says this: nobody is getting off the hook for the unfair trade balances and non-monetary tariff barriers that other countries have used against us, especially not China, which by far treats us the worst. He says there was no tariff exception announced on Friday. These products are subject to the existing 20% fentanyl tariffs, and they are just moving to a different tariff bucket. The fake news knows this, but refuses to report it. He says, we're taking a look at semiconductors and the whole electronics supply chain and the upcoming national security tariff investigations. He says, what has been exposed is that we need to make products in the United States and that we will not be held hostage by other countries, especially hostile trading nations like China, which will do everything within its power to disrespect the American people. He says we also cannot let them continue to abuse us on trade like they have for decades. Those days are over, he says, all caps, exclamation point. He says the golden age of America, which includes the upcoming tax and regulation cuts, a substantial amount of which was just approved by the House and Senate, will mean more and better paying jobs, making products in our nation and treating other countries, in particular China, the same way they have treated us. He says the bottom line is that our country will be bigger, better, and stronger than ever before. He says we will make America great again. So even President Trump now kind of backsliding on this electronics exemption announcement from Friday night and Saturday morning, essentially saying that nobody is getting off the hook, saying that there was no tariff exception announced on Friday. So like Charlie Gasparino said, seeming to be more and more uncertainty there as we'll just have to wait and see how the market.
Crazy.
Best and worst dinner.
Don't call me a Geoguessr noob, John. That's messed up, bro. How dare you?
Reveal the tariff rate on semiconductor imports this week. Here he is last night on Air Force One. Watch.
Mr. President, can you talk a little bit about the semiconductor tariff you posted on Truth Social today? What is the timeline for that?
That's right, but the tariffs will be in place in the not distant future because, as you know, like we did with steel, like we did with automobiles, like we did with aluminum, which are now fully on, we'll be doing that with semiconductors, with chips, and numerous other things.
Didn't Biden already do that?
And that'll take place in the very near future.
You know what rate the semiconductor tariff?
I'm going to be announcing it over the next week. But we'll also talk to companies. You know, you have to show a certain flexibility. Nobody should be so rigid. You have to have a certain flexibility.
Meanwhile, Xi Jinping is in Vietnam.
I don't want to hear from Maria Bartomo. She sucks. Anyways, it seems like they'll still be taxed, or there'll still be a 20% tariff on even electronics. There's a reciprocal exemption, but that's it. LB says, I'm not saying Trump is mentally handicapped or mentally ill, but I'm saying he's a stupid, idiotic R-word. Sorry, not sorry. VKM says, bruh, how can you tariff them under a wrong classification? Products are classified by HS nomenclature system for global consistency for taxes and customs. You can't tariff phones as semiconductors. That's an interesting point. I didn't know that. Will you be safe? I need to know. I need to know, iPhone, if you're going to be safe. Can you tell me? Probably do better if we didn't have iPhones anyways. Probably help our brains. China doubles down on tariff stance, demands U.S. abolish tariffs.
For a closer look at China when it comes to tariffs, let's get to Eunice Yoon in Beijing. A lot going on, Eunice, regarding rare earths, visit to Vietnam, and more. Good morning.
Yeah, there's a lot going on here. You guys were talking about those tariff exemptions. The Chinese government, on the whole, over the weekend, had acknowledged that the tariff exemptions were what they described as a small step, and even said that China was evaluating the impact. The state media, though, had said that this was a U.S. retreat, and also more evidence that the Chinese supply chain is really, really important for the world. Today, though, probably because of a lot of the confusion out of the messaging from the White House, the Chinese government doubled down on their overall stance. That is, that the U.S. government should abolish the tariffs and the what they describe as wrongful actions around those tariffs. What was also interesting is that a state TV-linked social media account, which is now closely watched for messaging on U.S.-China trade, just several hours ago elaborated a little bit further, saying that to the Trump team, their, what they call delusion, is China will compromise under high tariffs. The account goes on saying, if the U.S. really wants to talk, China needs to see real action. What was also interesting is that the same blogger account was hinting at who would be taken, what kind of step would be taken next. And the target, they said, was American IP and American brands. And then this blogger went on to suggest that Chinese people could reject them. And they said that they noted that Walt Disney and Comcast, which owns CNBC, have development and production businesses, theme parks, and consumer goods in China. They also mentioned Sony, Paramount Global, as well as Netflix. The messaging, though, overall, outside of that, to the potential for countermeasures, is that there needs to be a lot of support for Chinese exporters, and that this is paramount. Carl, you mentioned President Xi's visit to Vietnam. He is there in Southeast Asia on a three-nation tour, ostensibly to try to build up those trade ties. Today, he announced, or China and Vietnam announced that they had signed several trade negotiation deals. And then, of course, there is the private sector that is also getting involved to try to help redirect some of the goods that the exporters used to sell, and I guess so still do sell to the United States as well as elsewhere, but also to sell them here in China.
Well, I've got to tell you, Eunice, I listened to you all morning, and you've been incredibly spot on all these things. But when I listen to the rhetoric from China, this is 1968, 72 rhetoric. This is the kind of rhetoric that just says there's never going to be a meeting. Is there a way to have a Nixon to China moment? Because as far as I'm concerned, this is just right now. You're on the verge of when I was a little boy. We kept thinking, when are they going to bomb us? I mean, that was.
All right, calm down, bro. I'm not talking about bombs, I don't think, but certainly possibly a trade war.
The same rhetoric.
Well,
when are they going to launch their nuclear weapons? I mean, that's why we used to live in fear. That's why we had cubby holes. That's why we used to.
Calm down, dude.
Put our heads in a cubby hole because the Chinese were going to bomb us if the Russians didn't bomb us. This is the same sound.
Well, I mean, I think that the Chinese have shown that they are willing to negotiate, that they do eventually want to have some sort of meeting. But it's just that the rhetoric, I mean, you mentioned rhetoric coming out of China. The rhetoric from the Chinese perspective of the White House is not actually that helpful, because the way things are being set up is that President Trump is the kingmaker, and that all these countries around the world are going over there and groveling and asking for deals. From the Chinese perspective, this cannot happen, because for President Xi Jinping, it is so politically dangerous for him to be seen as crawling over to the United States asking for a deal.
Eunice, thank you. Eunice Yoon, we'll talk again shortly, I'm quite sure.
Man,
imagine standing at a crossroads between development and healing.
Is this going to pop off? Let's do a poll. Is a trade war coming between U.S. and China? We have to do a cringe tier list for talking heads. Jim Cramer is S tier. That's hilarious. That would be that would be a funny video. Cringiest talking heads on cable news. I don't know. I don't hate Jim Cramer, but there he was kind of just sounding ridiculous. I mean, maybe Taiwan needs to worry. I don't think that China's preparing to send bombs to the U.S. But like I said, it certainly seems like they're not going to just call Trump groveling. That's for sure. John says, we messed up enriching China. Maybe so. I hear you. Tonto's in the house. RV David's in the house. Global supply chain already screeching to a halt under Trump. Is that true?
I want to bring in NBC News White House correspondent Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung, and co-host of Bloomberg Business Week, Tim Stanovic. So, Gabe, at the White House, the president unleashing these tariffs, then his administration exempting these products that we were just talking about. Then he said there was no exception. Is this a strategy here?
Hi there, Jose. Good morning. Well, the White House is really struggling to explain all of this, not just over the weekend, but even this morning. As you said, the exemptions announced on Friday by Customs and Border Protection. And then on Sunday, Peter Navarro, for example, saying there were no exemptions. Howard Lutnick saying there were exceptions, but they might be temporary. And this morning, we heard from the president's top economic advisor, Kevin Hassett, reiterating the idea that these were not really exemptions, that they're just tariffs in different buckets. Take a listen to what Kevin Hassett said just a few moments ago.
What we're talking about is coverage, and so what's going to be covered, and pretty much everything's going to be covered. I think that it all has been very carefully designed and makes a good deal of sense. Just before I came in, equities were up a lot. I think the equilibrium policies of the president are going to be very, very good for the country and for equities.
That was the director of the National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett. He was also asked whether the administration was concerned that China is meeting with other countries such as Spain and Vietnam, and whether all these tariffs could be driving.
Spain? Don't they just siesta all day?
Our allies.
That's a joke. Spain. To all my Spanish, to the 3 people from Spain that watch, I apologize.
Closer to China. His response was that they're always concerned about China. Jose?
Yeah, and Tim, just wondering, I mean, this back and forth, the Wall Street Journal describes it as a confusing weekend. How do you describe it, and what's the impact on yes, Wall Street, but on Main Street and also just around the world?
Well, roller coaster whiplash, call it what you will. I think it's fair to say there's this sense.
Them some thick rimmed glasses, bruh.
Sense of confusion.
Siestas is a Mexican thing? I thought that siestas was from Spain, Espanol, Spanish thing. Julie Koch still runs Koch Industries. We need to move away from fossil fuels. I totally agree with you. Tony says China will spit on Trump. RB Davis says we all Americans need to keep our eyes open with Trump, Elon, GOP running our country. That's a question or a statement?
When it comes to the way that companies are trying to understand this new environment, think about it from the perspective of, your own world. If you're the CEO of your home, right? You're planning your vacations, you're planning your budgets for the year. You know how much money is coming in, so you can know how much money is going out. If you're the CEO of one of these companies, you don't necessarily know what your margins are going to be because you have no idea what the rate on tariffs is going to be on your products. And it could change just in a matter of hours, as we've seen several times over the past couple of weeks.
And that includes how much do we put in our R&D? I mean, all of these questions that you have to think in advance. However, the reality is that the fact is there are tariffs, right? 10% or 145%. Right. How does that play into a CEO's thinking going forward? And does it matter that it's 10% versus 145%?
Yeah.
Of course, bro. What are you talking about?
It definitely matters. I mean, 10% is 10%. That's, I would say, doable and manageable.
I mean, they're both not good, but one is way worse than the other.
For a lot of these companies, 145% is, some analysts would say, that's almost laughable at this point. And China, in fact, called it, in so many words, an unserious number. I mean, that's a prohibitively high tariff. I think a lot of folks out there would say, we don't necessarily think it's going to remain at 145%. I mean, just look at what happened over the weekend. Unclear what happens when it comes to sectoral tariffs and semiconductors and where exactly it will fall. But if this ends up happening, we can expect to pay more for certain items that are affected by tariffs.
And just to
Damn, your Apple Watch is going to be expensive as hell.
kind of jump on to Tim's point, I was speaking with a toy manufacturer the other day here in the United States.
VKM says there's a theory that tech bros want Trump to destroy the US dollar so crypto will rule. Somehow they don't realize if the economy is destroyed, so is their internet, their crypto needs for functioning. I think if you ruin, no one's going to have any money to invest in crypto if you ruin the dollar too. You know what I mean? If you ruin the dollar and Americans can't invest in crypto or use crypto, that's just as bad as, that's terrible. That's not going to help crypto.
States who said that at 145%, actually any increase beyond that would be marginal because he's essentially stopped his shipments. He makes Care Bears and Tonka trucks, and he was saying that, well, at 145%, the math doesn't math. So he can't turn a profit even if he wanted to raise the price because he would have to raise it so much that consumers would.
I started a quick donation goal. If you're willing and able, I'd much appreciate a donation. Yeah, but tech bros would have already invested in crypto, so they'd be rich. Not necessarily, because it could crash the crypto market. China's slave labor created the modern oligarchy. I think that's a fair point. Ada Az says we need to reconnect with nature and sunshine. Science and technology is great for vaccines and helping humans in so many ways, but we have become disconnected with our true self and each other. Couldn't say it better myself.
They just wouldn't buy those bears or those toy trucks. So you do start to worry about the global supply chain already kind of screeching to a halt in just the view of this uncertainty because they're saying.
That's what we talked about on Lichtman Live on Thursday when we showed that interview with that woman, small business owner. She's already like, I'm not buying. How could I can't buy product for right now. I'm going to wait it out and see what happens, you know?
Saying, look, at 145%, that's just a comic large number. Actually, the verbate that this CEO told me was that you might as well just jack it up to 3 billion percent because I'm not shipping anything to the United States.
You know, Kevin O'Leary last week, right here on one of the hours that I was privileged enough to anchor, said that it should be 400% tariffs on China. I'm just wondering when the vice president and the president has said that really this is about realigning the world economic order. You know, is something like 145% tariffs on the country that makes most of the things that we import a real way to help in that realignment?
If you or someone you know was...
I got to deal with these ads.
Depends on what we're talking. I'm
conflicted about ad blockers because as someone who does YouTube, I know how much you rely on people watching ads on your videos. So it's like, I should probably just do YouTube Premium at some point.
Talking about. I mean, no question that the president would love to see iPhones made here in the U.S. Our own Mark Gurman at Bloomberg has reported what a challenge that would be. He spoke to somebody last week who was experiencing the Apple supply chain who mentioned there are millions of people in China already who are part of Apple's supply chain. If you wanted to bring iPhone production to the U.S., one person told him, you'd have to essentially tell the entire city of Boston to drop everything that they're doing, and they're going to be making iPhones right now. There are literally places in China called iPhone City.
Not only that, they're going to have to all drop what they're doing, make iPhones for like $3 an hour. Not going to happen.
For a reason.
No, and I mean, and in China there are places.
So what I'm saying is
where labor is exploited to the degree where if you're a Uyghur, you know, you're forced to be in production of things under the most dire circumstances possible. So you know, cheap labor in many ways includes some really human rights violations that we aren't accustomed to in our country. But is there a possibility that iPhones or anything else can be brought to the United States, kind of maybe not in the short term, but in the mid-term?
I mean, in theory, yes. But I think the question is really whether or not you measure that in years or decades. Because
in theory, can you? Again, are you going to get millions of Americans to make iPhones for $3 an hour? I mean, I think in theory, no. I don't know what he means by in theory, yes.
it can't be done even in many cases over the course of a presidential administration. And I think that the important point to remember here is that it's not just the construction of the facility, which would require an enormous amount of capex, by the way, billions of dollars, but it's staffing up to the point that you guys just made.
Yeah, it's training. I mean, in 2017, Tim Cook basically said the reason we're in China is not because the labor is cheap. The reason we're there is because they know what they're doing. They have the education. They understand the machinery, and they understand how to make these things. We couldn't do that in the United States at this point. I will say...
Is that true? I mean, how hard is it to learn to make an iPhone? I understand. I'm not saying it's easy, but I mean, you know, you start training 16-year-olds to do it by 21. They're experts, you know. They only know what they're doing because they trained how to do it. I don't know if I buy that. Just because Tim Cook says it. I think they do it because the labor's cheap.
Apple has been diversifying its supply chain. Over the last 10 years, they've tried to move production of some iPhones to India. That's taken a decade at this point.
Some computers made in the States already.
Well, it's the finishing portion of the computers in Texas, and it's a very small number. And that was during the first Trump administration, but it does show that Tim Cook, he knew how to navigate that. This is just a completely different beast.
And so, Gabe, has the Trump administration opened any direct talks with the Chinese regime at all?
No, Jose, not as of yet. And of course, this is hugely significant and would be the next, the procession behind me. El Salvador's president is set to arrive here at the White House within the next hour or so. This is something that the U.S. needs to do in the next step of this trade war. But so far, we do not have any details.
John says, I would love for iPhones to be made in America. Yeah, I don't have any I have no problem with that. At its base level. I just don't know how real that is. I do not deny that jobs are important. They provide stability, they provide purpose, and when America loses a lot of jobs, a lot of people lose their purpose, they lose their stability. That's why you get, you know, declines in cities like Detroit. I just don't know if the solution to that problem is like, let's bring America back to a manufacturing country. And again, is it even possible to do that? Will people work for those wages? Are there enough, you know, just people to be manufacturing these phones? The whole skill set thing, I feel like Americans can figure it out, how to make iPhones. But the wages, the work hours, just the sheer amount of people that need to do it, I don't know if America can keep up, especially with countries like China and India, which have billions of people. Thank you, LB. I appreciate that donation. VKM says there's a strong supply chain and engineers to oversee production of parts in China. That matters a lot. That's why they probably mean by making in China being so good. Yeah. I don't deny that. I don't deny that. But I don't think that, I think you could, again, except for wages and just sheer number of people, I think you can recreate the brains needed to support that supply chain and having engineers oversee production of parts, etc. I'm not saying that's going to happen overnight, again, but I think it's possible. I just don't know if it will ever be possible. Like, that's something that I feel like we can overcome. It's not going to be easy. It's going to take 10 years, like they said. But I just don't know if we're ever going to go back to a point where America is a place where people are working in factories for $3 an hour. I just don't see that as our future. Can you imagine how much the iPhone would cost if manufactured in America? That's another thing to consider, right? If people aren't working for $3 an hour, then iPhone's price are going to go way up. Tony says Trump is cutting off education funding. So how do people expect Americans to build iPhones? That's a fair point. VKM says, on the other hand, the U.S. has very low unemployment, so you'd have to remove service jobs like healthcare, education, and professional services to compensate for making manufacturing jobs to fill. Right, I think that's a good point. Like, America is not, right now at least, at a point where like we're desperate for jobs. You know, we might get to that point, but not right now. Unemployment is pretty low in America right now. I think a bigger problem is affordability. Trump is just so hyper focused on bringing manufacturing jobs to the U.S. It's like he's not looking at the bigger picture. Cash now says the only thing I can see is Trump using taxpayer money to artificially lower costs for American-made goods. They already do that for agricultural products on a pretty dramatic level. Okay, I didn't know that. But again, eventually we're going to be paying for it. And I'm not saying that the cheap goods we get from abroad is a good system. I'm just not sure if he's creating a better system.
Details. A U.S. trade representative was interviewed over the weekend about this, and he said as much. Listen.
Are there any plans for Presidents Trump and Xi to speak?
Right now, we don't have any plans on that. This issue is truly at the leaders level. Before April 2nd, I had a conversation with my counterpart, and others did. Since April 2nd, we have this at the leaders level, and at some point, as President Trump has pointed out, we expect that we'll be able to have a conversation with them.
As you alluded to earlier, late last week, China referred to the tariff policies as unserious.
I saw a video, I think it was on Instagram, of somebody describing how, we should point the finger at corporations. They've totally screwed us. They brought their products overseas. They exploited labor. They exploit these trade markets. Yes, like China is a boogeyman. Trump likes to target China as the boogeyman. And of course he will never, which is a huge, huge, huge factor in all this, point his finger at corporations, which have totally effed over the common American. Let me see if I can find that video. It was very good.
Or a joke. But again, no scheduled meeting or talk between President Xi and President Trump. Later today, though, he is expected to meet with El Salvador's President Bukele and also later this week with the Italian Prime Minister, Jose.
And Tim, the New York Times reports that China, I should say, is retaliating by suspending, among other things, the exports of minerals and magnets that are, used in all kinds of things, and automobiles, semiconductors, et cetera. What kind of an impact is that going to have?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, these are rare earths and critical minerals, and they have the term rare earths, some of these, and they're not actually that rare. What is rare is who actually does the processing of these, and that's China. In some cases, more than 80%. In some cases, more than 90% of the processing of these minerals is done in China. So they have the control of the processing, which means they hold the supplies that these companies need. It's an issue for defense. It can be an issue for energy production. It could be an issue for manufacturing. And it's interesting because it's a very small portion of the Chinese economy, but it gives them certainly leverage when it comes to negotiation.
One is reminded of that supposed negotiation and agreement that the president had agreed with the president of Ukraine on rare earth minerals that apparently we're still waiting for that to happen. What's the impact of something like this long term, you think, Brian?
Yeah, well, I think that in many ways, because the trade war has kind of narrowed down to the United States and China, even though I want to point out 10% on other countries is actually still substantial in many cases. But because we kind of zoned in on China, I think that we're kind of entering the stage of this trade war that resembles a lot of what the first administration looked like, where the markets and politicians in D.C. and everyone inside the Beltway was really paying attention to, is there a meeting on the calendar between Chinese and U.S. officials? At what high level are those meetings? Because I think that that's going to be very much the tell as these two largest economies in the world are going at each other, whether or not there can be a resolution and whether it can be quick.
And so far as Gabe is telling us, no direct high-level conversations between the Chinese regime and the Trump administration. Gabe Gutierrez, Brian Chung, Tim Stenovac, thank you very much.
I don't know how to... Instagram is so hard to find, their search mechanisms. If you see a video and you don't like it and you just scroll, you'll never find it again. You know what I mean? But I really like this video. Georgianne says, does anyone know where the money from the $5 million gold cards goes that Trump is selling? Is that actually a thing now? Domino's or Pizza Hut? Neither. of like the big 3 chain pizzas, or I don't know, of the big chain pizzas, I like Papa John's the best. CC's is legit. It's okay. Why do all them fools speak like Mickey Mouse? Who's that? Do I watch The View? No. Their citizenship cards? I don't know, man. Or Georgianne. I don't even think they've figured out what that all means yet. I didn't like it. Damn it. VKM says tariffs will kneecap U.S. aircraft industry. Cashing out says, could corporations ship goods produced to, say, their factories in Vietnam, India, and then claim they were made there to avoid tariff? I think that's what China already does. I'm pretty sure that's all what they already do. I wish I could find this video, but I don't think there's any shot I'm going to find it. A friend had shared it on their story, but it's gone already. Oh well. Dennis says, small business such as restaurants always struggle to make just a little profit. These tariffs are just going to make it even harder. Ada says, please Google Julia Koch and see how someone so wealthy can be so obscure and have so much power. The wealthiest people do not want to be seen. Oh, I don't need to Google it. I know that already. You're right. Here's a video on that right now, VKM. John Oliver has a video on Trump's tariffs. You can't see it on stream, but you could check it out later. Yeah, they'll probably claim me. And then we've got this awful shit. El Salvador's Bukele says, preposterous to suggest he return Abrego Garcia to the U.S. What? That's crazy. That's nuts. Let's see if I can find some video. So, if you don't know, Bukele just visited Trump at the White House today, the president of El Salvador. And I guess they're both denying that they can get this guy back to the U.S., which is so fucked up.
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to have suggested that I smuggle terrorists into the United States, right? How can I smuggle?
He just said, are you suggesting I smuggle terrorists into the United States? This guy was proven to be here on asylum. He's not a terrorist.
How can I return him to the United States? Like, I smuggle him into the United States, or what do I do? Of course, I'm not going to do it. It's like, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States?
You don't have to smuggle him. You're the president of the country. You can negotiate with Trump to get him back into the country legally. Sam, are you a progressive or establishment Democrat? I'm a progressive. I'm definitely not an establishment Democrat. Why the F does President Bukele not want to remove someone who is already obviously not a criminal? He won election in El Salvador to put criminals in prison, not innocent people. Good point.
United States. I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
So they're just going to both say we don't have the power. One of you has the power. And I think both of you have the combined negotiating power to do this.
Inside El Salvador. Yeah, but I'm not releasing, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country.
Why does he keep calling him a terrorist?
We just turned the murder capital of the world into the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? No, that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, released into our country.
Oh, yeah, of course they would.
There's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people.
These are sick people. That's just, I don't know why that makes me laugh. It's just so, journalists are sitting there saying, I really want criminals to be released in our streets. And they're just sick people, these journalists.
Let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President. Do you plan to ask President Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country.
What is that? That's a lie, right? That has to be a lie. I thought he was here on asylum. Is she just bold lying, or is there something to that? R.V. Davis says lie.
And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country.
Is this true? I don't know. Maybe I need to do some more research. These are some bold statements from Pam Bondi.
Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President.
Right, of course. I told you she's saying it's not up to us, not in our power. Bukele saying it's not up to me, it's not in my power. Everybody passing the buck.
That if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So this is how they're going to get out of it. They're just going to both say, not in our power. He's going to say, not in our power. So it says that he was deported despite being granted protections by a U.S. immigration judge. So he wasn't here illegally. The Supreme Court ordered Trump administration to facilitate his return. Trump said that, and his team said it was up to the El Salvadorian government to decide whether to return. Bukele said he would not do that. The question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist back into the United States? We heard him say that. This is why they're such buddy-buddy. Because the Trump administration is paying the Salvadorian government $6 million to... This is all you need to know right here. Boom. Just because court rules something doesn't mean it's true. Okay. Okay, she said Abrego had not been in the United States legally and downplayed the issue with his deportation as a paperwork issue. Right, Rubio and Miller are saying the same thing. Rubio says that no court in the United States has the right to conduct foreign policy. That's not foreign policy. You sent a guy who had, at least according to a court order, legal status in the United States. That's a domestic issue. You're talking about domestic deportations. Was Abrego Garcia in the U.S. legally? So, it says here, he'll also get to face the allegations that prompted his expulsion, a 2019 accusation from local police in Maryland that he was an MS-13 gang member. Okay, so obviously, right, she was lying. She said he was an MS-13. In 2019, he was accused of being I mean, he might be, but he might not be. We don't seem to know. Abrego denied the allegations and was never charged with a crime. His attorney said a U.S. immigration judge subsequently shielded him from deportation to El Salvador because he likely faced persecution there by local gangs that terrorized his family. All right, so he was accused of being an MS-13 member, but he denied the allegations. I mean, whatever that means. But he was never charged with the crime, and a judge shielded him from deportation. I mean, how could he be illegal if a judge protected him from deportation? The Trump administration deported him, and later describing it as a mistake and an administrative error, but insisting he was MS-13. Abrego grew up in El Salvador, according to documents filed in his immigration court in 2019. His father was a former police officer. His mother, Cecilia, sold pupusas. The entire family ran the business from their home. A local gang, Barrio 18, began extorting the family for rent money and threatened to kill his older brother or force him into their gang if they weren't paid, court documents state. The family complied, but eventually sent Cesar to the U.S. Abrego was targeted by Barrio 18 according to his immigration case. When he was 12, the gang threatened to take him away until his father paid, quote, all the money that they wanted. They still watched him as he walked to and from school. Abrego fled legally to the U.S. in 2011 when he was 16. 5 years later, he met his wife, a U.S. citizen. In 2018, after she learned she was pregnant, he moved in with her and they had 2 children. They live in Prince George's County. So if he's married to a U.S. citizen, then doesn't that make him legal? In 2019, he went to Home Depot looking for work when he was arrested by county police. Detectives asked if he was a gang member. After explaining he wasn't, he was detained by ICE. Abrego later told an immigration judge that he would seek asylum and asked to be released. ICE, however, alleged that he was a certified gang member based on information that came from a confidential informant. According to Garcia's attorney in his current case, the criminal informant had alleged that Abrego Garcia belonged to MS-13 in New York, where he never lived. The information was enough for an immigration judge in 2019 to keep Abrego Garcia in jail as his immigration case continued. The judge says the informant was proven and reliable and had verified gang membership and rank. The judge said the informant was provable and reliable. Garcia later married Sura in a Maryland detention center. In 2019, an immigration judge denied Garcia's asylum request but granted him protection from being deported back to Mexico because of a well-founded fear of gang persecution. He was released and ICE did not appeal. So, a judge denied his asylum request but granted him protection from being deported. I don't quite understand that, but maybe there's some sort of legal difference between those two things. In theory, yes, marriage, this is from VCAM. In theory, yes, marriage lets you stay in the U.S., but I think there's an exception if you entered the U.S. illegally. But it doesn't seem like he did enter illegally. It seems like he entered under asylum. Garcia checked in with ICE yearly while the Department of Homeland Security issued him a work permit. He joined a union and was employed full-time as a sheet metal apprentice. When he was pulled over in March, authorities pressed him about being an MS-13 member. They asked about a photo they had of him playing basketball on a public court. What is it? I mean, he would repeat the truth again and again that he was not in a gang. That's the end of it. I don't... okay. Do you think the Supreme Court is going to hold him in contempt for not returning the prisoner? I don't know. This situation is screwed. He needs to go to court to prove he's not guilty. I understand why this case became such a big issue, because it's complicated. And both sides can find tidbits to prove at least their rhetoric around this guy. Like, this is weird that the informant said that he belonged to an MS-13 chapter in New York where he's never lived. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would he be a member of a chapter in New York? That's strange. But here it says the information was enough for an immigration judge to keep Garcia in jail as his case continued. The judge said the informant was proven and reliable and had verified his gang membership and rank. But if he's so reliable and proven, how do they explain this discrepancy of him claiming that he was in New York? it's not complicated. They're just making it more complicated. I mean, it seems pretty clear here. In October 2019, an immigration judge denied his request, his asylum request, but granted him protection from being deported. This, I'm sorry, I just said it makes sense. I'm sorry, but this doesn't make sense to me. He was released and ICE did not appeal. He checked in with ICE yearly. I don't quite understand what this judge is saying by saying he doesn't have asylum, but he's got protection from being deported. Does that mean, to me, that means he's here legally. If a judge says that you're protected from being deported, they have to grant you some sort of legal status. They can't say, like, you're protected to be deported, but you're also illegal here in the United States. I don't get it. And I don't get why this judge said that this informant was so reliable with this massive discrepancy of him being a chapter member of some New York MS-13 gang. I don't get it. And he was never charged with a crime before being accused of being an MS-13 member. And guys, yeah, the NFL draft is on April 24th. He's screwed. He's stuck there now. After hearing Trump and Bukele today, he's screwed. He's not coming back. I mean, I don't know, but the Supreme Court ruled they had to come back. I don't know. But hearing them at least puts a massive damper on the movement for him to come back. We heard that already.
You can.
Hello, Blaze. We got 37 people watching, only 34 likes. Come on, guys.
Ongoing saga surrounding a Maryland man that the Trump administration deported by accident. President Trump is meeting with the president of El Salvador right now as that man, Abrego Garcia, continues to sit in a prison cell there. Scripps News legal affairs correspondent Avajoy Burnett joins me now live from Washington. Okay, Avajoy, we just saw some of this Oval Office exchange between Trump and the president of El Salvador. That president was asked, are you going to send Abrego Garcia back? What happened?
And he said he doesn't have the authority, the power to send Abrego Garcia back to the United States. This is a significant development that's just now coming into our newsroom from the White House in the last few minutes, because remember, this is someone who was strapped.
Did I see the 60 Minutes interview of Zelensky? I didn't know. And I can't watch it because 60 Minutes claims shit.
Traveled to Washington, D.C. from El Salvador. He's an ally of the United States government, and he's now saying he doesn't have the power to send Abrego Garcia back to the United States. The U.S. officials right there.
Oh, I know why he's calling him Bukele is calling him a terrorist, because the Trump administration made, whatever that article said, decreed that all MS-13 gang members are terrorists. And Bukele, I guess, is under the impression that he is an MS-13 gang member, therefore he's a terrorist.
They're in the White House, they're saying they don't have the power to demand his return to the United States. So the big question now is who will have the authority to demand the return of Abrego Garcia? We saw this decision from the U.S. Supreme Court last week, Thursday, where they're saying the government here needs to facilitate his return. But the government and many White House officials are saying that ruling was actually in their favor, which is not the read of many other people. And they're saying the United States Supreme Court Court is saying they just need to facilitate his return on the domestic end. There was no use of that word.
Oh, that's what Pam Bondi meant when she said, we'll provide a plane. That's her reading of that court ruling. That all they need to do is, if it happens, they need to provide a plane or something.
In that order from the U.S. Supreme Court last week, but we're hearing from officials in the White House who are saying they've done everything that they can on their end here in the United States. And then we've just now heard from President Bukele from El Salvador. He's saying he does not have the
It's not Bukele, it's Bukele.
authority, the power to return Abrego Garcia to the United States. This is the president of El Salvador saying he does not have the authority to do that. So right now, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, he is in kind of a middle ground, a limbo, where you have these two world powers, the leader of the United States and the president of El Salvador, saying that we've done what we can do, even though there's a standing order from the U.S. Supreme Court which says he should be sent back to the United States. I want for you guys to take a listen to something that Stephen Miller, he's one of the top White House officials, what he said about this earlier today.
Is the president going to ask for him to be returned to the United States or not? Like, yes or no?
So first of all, it's not a question for me to answer, but I think that the assumption that underlies the question is what needs to be corrected, which is that there was no mistake that was made. The deportation order means the judge has said he must be deported from the country. He has no right to remain here any longer. He must be removed from the country. So his only options are to be deported to his home country or another country. That's it. There's no other option. He doesn't get to stay here. He doesn't get to live here. He has no future here. He has no right to be here. He's an illegal
But didn't that judge make a decision off a clerical error?
alien.
So a few points of clarification there. We must point out that the U.S. government, the Department of Justice, has admitted in court that a mistake was made, and Abrego Garcia was accidentally sent among those more than 200 other people back to El Salvador. So right there you hear Stephen Miller saying a mistake was not made. They have admitted in court that a mistake was made. And he referenced a court order which said he should be deported. That court order also said he should not be sent back to El Salvador. So this is an ongoing saga that we continue to watch right now as Mr. Abrego.
Thank you for clarifying. This is a good journalist. Clarifying, checking these liars.
Garcia sits in that prison in El Salvador.
Yeah, Avajoy, aren't we entering into some really constitutionally murky and potentially really questionable space here as far
Yes.
as you've got the Trump administration clearly not wanting for him to come back, and you've got his attorney saying he should come back.
Susie Q is here.
The courts agree. So how far are these attorneys for Abrego Garcia willing to go? What happened?
VKM says, I've noticed that some Trump officials make me feel like I'm losing brain cells and some infuriate me instead. Yeah, I feel that too. But you have to know what they're saying, or else they're going to run 1,000 miles around the earth before you even blink. You know what I mean? You have to stay up to date with what they're saying.
Happens next?
That's the big question. There was a major hearing in Greenbelt, Maryland on Friday, and the attorneys who were representing Abrego Garcia along with his wife and other family members are saying there are things that we can do. There are powers that this particular federal district court judge has in order to demand his return. But in some of the court filings that I saw late last night, they're saying that the United States government or the federal system, the judicial system, does not have the authority to demand certain things from the executive branch, even though the highest court in the land has said that the Trump administration needs to facilitate his return. Take a listen to what the attorney who's representing Abrego Garcia told me on Friday after that very important hearing as they wait to figure out what will happen with their client.
It didn't require, intricate diplomatic negotiations. We simply put them in the jail under the agreement that we have under which they house people for us. Well, under that same agreement, we can get them out, right? I mean, Trump didn't have to call Bukele to put Kilmer Abrego Garcia into the facility, and Trump doesn't have to call Bukele to get Kilmer Abrego Garcia out of the facility. This can be done essentially just by, the same operational relationships that they have on a day-to-day basis with all of these deportation flights that are going down there near daily.
You mentioned this a little bit earlier, Patrick. Are we in a situation where there's a possible constitutional crisis? And the simplest way to describe that is a particular branch of the government infringing or not regarding what the other branches, the checks and balances from the other branches? So are we in a situation now where it seems as if the executive branch is not listening to a co-equal branch of the government, which is the judicial branch? There's a possibility of that. There will be a court hearing tomorrow. We just have to.
When the government ignores the courts.
Make America safe again. This tiny $40 camera stops intruders before they get through your door.
Okay, I am here on a Monday morning and
Andrew Weissman. Who's this guy? I've seen this guy before.
And I'm here to answer questions, but I was looking for your questions, and they all are a variation of the following. As it looks like Trump has no intention of abiding by federal, including SCOTUS, that is Supreme Court decisions, what recourse is there? He owns DOJ, so it's not like the marshals can go after him. How can he be made to comply? And I get essentially that question over and over again, particularly as it relates to the Abrego Garcia case. So let me quickly bring you all up to speed on that case. You'll recall that is the case where a El Salvador immigrant was wrongfully deported. The government agrees it was a mistake that they wrongfully deported him, in spite of the fact that there was an immigration judge's order that he cannot.
And now Stephen Miller is saying it wasn't a mistake. So never, I don't know. I don't want to give the Trump administration too much credit that they're telling the truth here, or they admitted mistake. A lawyer admitted mistake in court. The administration is not admitting mistake. Let's make it clear.
Be removed to El Salvador because of the danger to him there. So there was a court order precluding the government from doing that. The government did not seek to have that court order changed, to argue that it should no longer be in effect. So that was in place, and in spite of that court order, they wrongfully removed him. They didn't give him any due process, any hearing. They didn't give him an opportunity to challenge in any way his removal. And he is now, as I record this, sitting in a jail, and apparently it's a horrendous jail in El Salvador. This case led to the district judge ordering that he be brought back to this country. And in key wording, she said a number of things. She said in her order that the government needs to effectuate and facilitate his release from prison in El Salvador.
Effectuate and facilitate. Effectuate. Put into force of operation. That seems pretty clear. Not like wait for someone else to put into operation and then give a plane. That seems pretty clear, right? Oops.
And to bring him back here, and that he should be accorded his due process rights as if he had not been wrongfully removed. And I can read you that language because it becomes important. So hold on one second. I'm going to pull it up here for you. She said, defendants, that is the U.S. government, are hereby ordered to, quote, facilitate and effectuate.
See, if she had just said facilitate, I feel like Pam Bondi's argument would be somewhat valid. But adding that word effectuate changes everything.
The return of plaintiff Camille Armando Abrego Garcia to the United States. And then she gave a deadline. And she said, this preliminary relief is issued to restore the status quo and to preserve Abrego Garcia's access to due process in accordance with the Constitution and governing immigration statutes. So this case then was affirmed by the Court of Appeals in the Fourth Circuit, and then it was taken to the Supreme Court of the United States, which ruled that the district judge was correct in finding that Mr. Garcia should be, that the government has to, quote, facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador, and has to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he...
Oh, so they took out the word effectuate. Those dirty dogs. That's the key word, and they took it out. At least it seems. Let me keep listening.
He not been improperly sent to El Salvador. So the two obligations that the Supreme Court said the government has: to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador, and second, to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador, and second, to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. Two obligations. There's no dissenting justice There's not a single justice who said that's inappropriate. The only quibble that the Supreme Court had was with the term effectuate.
I called that. Did I not call that?
Because it was unclear if the government somehow could not do this, if they somehow have lost control of him. They said that the word effectuate is unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. So what led then is the district court, in light of that, said that she wanted daily updates from status reports from the United States government as to what it is doing to facilitate Mr. Abrego Garcia's return. So that's sort of where we left it. And here is what is both the constitutional crisis that is looming and the cruelty of this administration that we are seeing. So
that word effectuate. The Supreme Court, I think, knew what they're doing, taking that word out. Who do you think deserves a Webby Award? Probably Lichtman Live.
Let me start with the cruelty. I have been on air on MSNBC saying the following over and over again because I just can't fathom the following.
No.
Everybody go subscribe to Andrew Weissman. Subscribe.
I'd like everyone to think about what your reaction would be if you were the grown-up in the room, the senior person at the Department of Justice or at the White House, and someone came to you and said, let me just tell you what just happened. We messed up. We have deported somebody by mistake. They should not have been deported. There was a court order against it. We didn't give this person a hearing, and he is now sitting in prison in a foreign country based on our mistake. Can anyone imagine that the conversation wouldn't be, regardless of politics, big P politics or little p politics, wouldn't be how to get that person back to the United States and get him released from jail? This is a human being who is sitting in jail currently. I cannot imagine being in the government and not having that be the reaction. And please think about what the mindset of the people who would say, no, let's fight it. Let's say that we have no ability to control what happens in El Salvador. Well, that is exactly, now turning to the legal issue, that is what's happening. The filings in the district court do not comply with the district court's order to set out exactly how they are facilitating his return. All they say is that essentially he Mr. Abrego Garcia, is now being held by the sovereign state of El Salvador, and they seem to be suggesting that he's beyond the reach of the United States government. That is something that is highly questionable, is to put it mildly. The district judge and the Court of Appeals have set out a number of facts that strongly indicate that, of course, the United States has the ability to influence El Salvador to gain his return. First of all, the agreement that has been reported with El Salvador is that they are willing to house these people for a fee. So, and that this is
that's the key point right there.
Temporary arrangement for this year. So if that's the case, if they can get him there and get El Salvador to agree to keep him, they can get El Salvador to release him. Second, people have pointed out that Kristi Noem has gone to El Salvador for a photo op at the prison. If that can be arranged, it suggests a level of coordination and agreement between the two countries. If the government wants to suggest that it has no coercive ability and power, that one of the strongest countries, if not the strongest country in the world, has no ability to effectuate or to facilitate his return, they should have to establish that at a hearing with a witness or witnesses, and they haven't done that. So they are just flouting the district court order and pretending that Mr. Abrego Garcia is being held by some truly independent third party where there was no prior agreement whatsoever, and he just happens to be in some third party country where he voluntarily went, and the United States has no ability to cause that country to release him. But that's obviously not what happened. And what's really shocking is that you're doing this in a situation where you have caused that person to be unlawfully deported and illegally imprisoned in this foreign country. And you are now, by all accounts, flouting the order of the district court and, just to be clear, the order of the Supreme Court of the United States that they are required to facilitate his release.
But we already heard Pam Bondi, how she's figured out how to twist that to mean that they don't actually have to do anything unless El Salvador does something first, and then El Salvador is saying, well, I can't put a terrorist back into the United States, et cetera, et cetera. Did this man commit a crime? No. In the article I read from the AP, it said that he has never been convicted of a crime. He was detained for 5 months or something like that by ICE, but eventually he was released based off of certain court hearings, and ICE never appealed.
From the El Salvador prison. That is the language of the Supreme Court decision. That is not just to bring him back here, it is also to facilitate his release. And one of the things that they have not said in the United States filing.
Let me look at the definition of facilitate. Make an action or process easy or easier. Make an action, process easy. Yeah, I think this gives them enough room to twist it to their liking. They want to make an example out of him. I think they just want to deport as many Central Americans as humanly possible. I don't think they really care if they're like legally protected under some judge. Like, I don't think they care. I think they just want them all out.
Is what exactly are they doing to facilitate that release? Even if it were a completely independent country with no prior agreement or arrangement, that doesn't mean the United States wouldn't have an ability to facilitate a release, that kind of negotiation.
But now we know the issue is that Bukele is saying that he can't do it. So doesn't seem like there's any wiggle room.
Between sovereign states happens all the time. And that has not been told to the court, at least publicly, and there's no indication that it's even been told to the judge, the district judge, privately, which, by the way, she invited and said if there's something that you can't say on the public record, you can submit something to her privately. So that's where things stand. And this is the thing that I was always thinking it won't really happen, but it is happening. It was naive on my part.
So what's next? They will go after legal green card holders for no reason? I don't know about that, but I think they're going to go after... This guy had the sniffs of MS-13. Like, he was accused by some informant, and he had a court case where the judge said the informant. So he had this air of MS-13. I think if anybody has any sort of air of illegality or gang relationship or criminal behavior, they're gone. And if they make a mistake, well, he had an air of this gang affiliation, so who cares? And he was born in El Salvador anyway, so who cares? That's their perspective, not mine, just to be clear.
This is that constitutional crisis of the flouting of court orders, both the district court order and the Supreme Court order. And it's being done in a situation that could not be more insensitive and callous with respect to a human being, and a situation which was of the administration's own making because of its incompetence. So the final point is the question that was asked, which is what can be done when this administration violates a court order? And I hate to say it, but the answer is not much, because...
That's not good.
As one of the things that the Constitution provides is that in a situation which is a high crime and misdemeanor, the president can be impeached and then tried in the Senate. So impeached by the House and tried in the Senate. That's already happened twice with respect to this president. And it takes a majority of the House, which is controlled by the Republicans, and it takes 2/3 of the votes in the Senate, which is also controlled by Republicans. So it is highly unlikely that either of those things is going to happen with this particular Congress. The courts can try to implement their ruling. They can make it clear that it is a violation. They could indeed impose fines. They could even...
Most hearing loss is moderate.
If it was extreme, impose a jail term on whoever has violated court order. And the issue is how that would actually get effectuated if the administration simply flouts it. And remember, as one of you pointed out in the questions to me, that the marshals who would carry out such an order actually are part of the executive branch. And so it's unclear how that would work. Even if they followed the court order, the executive branch might fire them before they could actually effectuate a court order. We also have the administration that is in control of the Department of Defense, i.e. the military. This is an issue that Liz Cheney very much focused on in her book and was very worried about, which is, step number one in an authoritarian regime is control of the military. Again, it remains to be seen whether the military would violate a court order if directed to do so by the White House. But that is all territory that is certain.
Seems like they can't, but I don't know.
New to this country, and it is coming up in this Abrego Garcia case. There's definitely a thing to keep an eye on.
Michelle says, my understanding is that SCOTUS wanted to remove effectuate because they said that means by all means necessary, and didn't want to leave wording that could mean use military means. Maybe. Seems like an excuse, but maybe.
There is a hearing in the district court tomorrow. And finally, what I would do if I were the district court judge is I would have a hearing. I would say, you are making these contentions, government, about not being able to facilitate his release. You're claiming that you don't have any power or ability to do that. I want a first-hand witness, and I want to know exactly what the agreement is with El Salvador and the terms under which they are housing people there. And if you are saying you have no control, you need to prove it. You need to counter the evidence that suggests strongly otherwise, and that I, the district judge, have found, and that the Court of Appeals has affirmed. And the Supreme Court has not in any way suggested that part was incorrect. In fact, they affirmed that part of my decision that said you must facilitate his release. case, and you need to ensure that he has accorded his due process rights as if he had not been improperly removed from this country. So stay tuned for more this Tuesday, and I would not be surprised if this case ends up back in front of the Supreme Court, and we'll see just how strong that coalition of 9 justices are that so far have ruled in 2 immigration cases in the past 10 days.
I feel like they're just going to say the same thing, and Bukele and the Trump administration are going to twist it to their own political rhetoric, and I don't think we'll be any further than we are now. But I don't know. Luis says, I just finished watching the whole 43 minutes of lying. I'm assuming you mean Trump and Bukele. I don't know how I managed to stay for the whole thing. Near the end, there was a question whether he would deport U.S. citizens to El Salvador. Guess what he said? Yes. Does anybody have a clip of that? So he's saying that he actually said that he would send U.S. citizens to El Salvador based on what? If they were criminals or what? He said yes, but also said he doesn't know if he can. That's just confusing to me. So now you commit a crime in the U.S., you're a U.S. citizen, you go to jail in El Salvador? Like, that's nuts. I mean, our own prison system is bad enough, but if you commit a crime, you go to El Salvador, a country you're not even from. Does anybody have a clip of that? Or a timestamp? Susie, you sent me a link to my Gmail. They're still going? Or these are just old lives? Lives. Susie, where did you send me that link? I don't have an email. Oh, for some reason links don't work in the chat. I don't know why. Oh, maybe, wait. Yeah, I don't think links work in the chat. Can you email it to me? lichtman.sam@gmail.com. Wait, is this an old clip or he said this today? He said this today. Do you know when he said it exactly, Luis?
Short-lived product exemptions. Which specific products are you considering, and how long is short-lived? Weeks, months?
I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places, and they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here, but they need a little bit of time. So I'm talking about things like that.
What about any Apple products, other cell phones?
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. And you have to be. You just can't have a wall and you'll only go. No, sometimes you have to go around it, under it, or above it. There'll be maybe things coming up. I speak to Tim Cook. I helped Tim Cook recently, and that whole business.
There's a Reuters article on this. Oh, I got your link, Susie. Thank you.
Over the weekend, President...
Oh, this is from 6 days. I didn't even know he did this, though. This is from 6 days ago.
Over the weekend, President Trump said that he would be willing to have U.S. citizens deported to El Salvador with the cooperation of President Bukele. How would that work legally, and how many people would potentially be available for that operation?
So the president has discussed this idea quite a few times publicly. He's also discussed it privately. You're referring to the president's idea for American citizens to potentially be deported. These would be heinous, violent criminals who have broken our nation's laws.
Look, nobody wants heinous, violent criminals on the streets, but it doesn't mean they should be sent to El Salvador. Trump said he would only go through with the idea if the administration determined it was legal. The administration?
Repeatedly, and these are violent repeat offenders in American streets. The president has said if it's legal, right, if there is a legal pathway to do that. He's not sure. We are not sure if there is. It's an idea that he has simply floated and has discussed very
It's a bad idea.
publicly as in the effort of
Trump said on Monday that he wants to deport some violent criminals who are U.S. citizens to El Salvador. They were to be incarcerated under an agreement with that country's government. Are just human rights just out the window in America now? Like, that's how he's dealing with going around human rights. Just send them, our prisons are too soft. We need to send them to El Salvador. Thank you, Joshua D. Hello, Stefan. The remarks are one of the clearest signals yet that the U.S. president is serious about deporting naturalized and U.S.-born citizens, a proposal that has alarmed civil rights advocates and is viewed by many scholars as unconstitutional. I don't know. As scary and crazy as this is, it's so crazy, I don't think it's got any legs. But it's just, the fact that he's even putting it out publicly is insane. Trump said he would only go through with the idea if his administration determined it was legal. It was not clear what level of due process an American would receive before being deported. He said, quote, "We always have to obey the laws." You always obey the law. But we have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head. These are just such weird examples. With baseball bats when they're not looking. They're absolute monsters. Okay, that's fine. So send them to jail. Not an El Salvadorian jail. They're American, you go to an American jail. If you're El Salvadorian, you go to El Salvadorian jail. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but we'll have to be looking at the laws on that. Trump told reporters last week that he, quote, loved the idea of deporting citizens to El Salvador after Bukele said the country was open to housing U.S. prisoners. So Bukele is just going to make a shit ton of money taking U.S. prisoners from the U.S. That's crazy.
I don't want to hurt anybody, but the end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country. We're the greatest economic power in the world if we're smart. If we're not smart, we're going to hurt our country very badly. We lost with China over the Biden years trillions of dollars on trade. And he let them fleece us. And we can't do that anymore. And you know what? I don't blame China at all. I don't blame President Xi. I like him. He likes me. Who knows? Who the hell cares?
Do you have any updates on
But you know what?
What? Do you have any updates with talks with China?
No, let me just tell you this. I don't blame China. I don't blame Vietnam. I see the meeting today. Is that wonderful? That's a lovely meeting.
You know who you should blame? Big corporations.
Meaning, like trying to figure out how do we screw the United States of America. Don't forget the European Union was formed to do just that. The European Union was formed to hurt the United States and on trade. And they get us on NATO because they don't pay their bills. But now, since I got involved, they have been paying their bills. I took in over $600 billion for NATO. Nobody took in anything. They were all delinquent. They had 8 nations out of 28 paid their bills. The rest of them were way delinquent. And I said, if you don't pay your bills, we're not going to protect you anymore. And the money poured in over 600. The Secretary General last week made that statement. He said, I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't get anybody to pay because the United States was footing the bill for NATO. Well, we got hurt there, and we got hurt on trade. Likewise, European Union, they're trying. They don't take our cars. Volkswagen, Chevrolets in Munich, I can tell you that. Millions of people. But she made them legal. But we would call them illegal immigrants of people into Angela Merkel when she was there. And she was letting millions of people infiltrate Germany, which was not so good from, we would call them illegal immigrants. But she made them.
Does Trump wear dentures? Is that why he's sometimes like, he loses them and he's slurring?
Legal. But I said to her, and I get along with her very well, I said, how many Chevrolets do we have in Munich or Frankfurt? Why? None. Donald, none. I said, you're right. Over.
How long
okay.
do you think the exemptions
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Where is the question about?
They do. I heard because the United States was
I just want to hear him say it.
footing the bill for NATO. The rest of them were way delayed. I took in over $600 billion for NATO. The union was formed to.
Have any updates on?
But you know what? What? And he let them fleece us. We're the greatest economic power. Sometimes you have to go around it, under it, or above it.
On any Apple products, other cell phones? Product exemptions. Which specific products are you considering, and how long is short-lived? Weeks, months?
I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies with nuclear weapons. If they have, get along great with China. We're from Iran. China. Iran had, and we put secondary tariffs because the jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened? Their crime went way down. The jails of Venezuela, when I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. Known criminal, and we have a huge prison population. We have a huge rape. And what do you think? There's a special category of person? There is
aliens, brought criminals.
And they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Does that include a potential strike on Iranian nuclear facilities?
Of course it does.
And just a follow-up question, a clarification. You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens, brought criminals to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens, fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What do you think? There's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones too, and I'm all for it because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons. And
yeah, the private prisons are making, I mean, if you're worried about money, those private prisons make a ton of money.
Some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't.
Should a person who hits someone with a baseball bat go to prison? Absolutely. But if they're American, they need to be dealt with in America. You can't send those people to El Salvador.
But he does a great job with that. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we're studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people.
He's trying to justify this by being like, these are really bad people. It's like, they could be the worst of the worst. They could be, serial killers. They could be bombers. They're in America. They commit their crimes in America. They're American. They need to go through the American judicial and prison system. It's that simple.
Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago.
Harvey Davis says that Trump's a rapist. That's a good point. Send Trump to El Salvador, baby. You said it yourself, Trump. You said it yourself, man. It's not me. You said it, bro.
Oh, no, 4 years ago. When I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's what happened. The jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened? Their crime went way down. But now Venezuela has other problems. You know what?
What did he say? The jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. and their crime went. What is he? I don't even know what he's saying.
The problem is they have no money. Yeah. Because I shut off their oil, and we put secondary tariffs because they're not doing what's right over there. They know what to do. We spoke to them. I spoke to them. They know what to do, but they have no money. Venezuela has no money, but Iran had no money, and Iran behaved so beautifully. And then Biden took all those secondary tariffs on. I told China, you can't buy oil.
All right, now he's just rambling. I just wanted to hear him say that because that's crazy.
Under Biden.
How will Trump and Bukele's deportation partnership impact immigration in the U.S.?
Today from President Trump and multiple members of his cabinet about the possible return of a Maryland father who was mistakenly deported and is now in a notorious Salvadoran prison. Their overall message? No. One after another, from Kirsty Noem to Stephen Miller, rejecting the idea. And when pressed about Kilmer Abrego Garcia's return, here's what the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, had to say.
That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him,
It's only foreign affairs because you mistakenly sent him to a foreign country.
would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
After that, President Trump praised her remarks. Joining me now, NBC's Yamiche El-Sindor, NBC's David Noriega, who's in Los Angeles' Pico Union, the most Salvadoran neighborhood in America, and Marie Hinojosa, anchor, executive producer of PRX's Latino USA, a distinguished journalist in residence at Barnard College, the founder of Futuro Media Group, and an MSNBC political analyst. Yamiche, I think we need to say that President Bukele, even when asked about a return, compared a possible return of Garcia to smuggling him into the country. What more came out of that meeting and that, as often is the case now, impromptu press conference in the Oval Office?
Well, this was really a remarkable exchange between President Trump and President Bukele of El Salvador. The two men were very clear and on the same page. So you can see that they have a very warm relationship, and we're really echoing a lot of the same things. The president saying that he did not believe that he needed to go and retrieve this Maryland man, that he is believing that he's a member of MS-13. The president over the weekend said that if the Supreme Court told him to return someone, that he would do that. But the president making it clear that he has no intention of doing that. And the Supreme Court here, we should make it very clear, said that the United States must facilitate the return of Abrego Garcia.
LB says it's criminal if you haven't smashed the like button. That's true, actually. That's so true.
To the United States. But the president of El Salvador is saying that he believes that he is in the right not to return him. And the two men in some ways were talking a lot about the fact that he was dangerous and that this is really a shared goal that they have to keep this man in that prison, but also to fight what they see as crime across the board. The president also did something remarkable, President Trump that is. He talked about possibly having people that are in the United States, Americans, sent to El Salvador, saying that he wanted Pam Bondi to look into that issue. So that's also something that I think came out of that exchange. The other thing that the president was talking about was tariffs and economics, but on the issue of immigration, it's very clear that the president does not plan, it seems, to follow this order that came from the Supreme Court, Chris.
All right, David, tell me, what are you hearing from people there about this?
It's all about that word, facilitate, and taking out the word, what was the other word? No, I forget.
This visit and about the relationship between the U.S. and El Salvador right now.
Yeah, so just to set the scene for you, Chris, a little bit, I'm at a bakery, a small bakery here in Pico Union, which, as you pointed out, is the most Salvadoran neighborhood in the United States. This place is a fixture. It's been here for...
Effectuate. Yes, thank you, Luis.
20 years. It's sort of a gathering place for the Salvadoran community here in LA. And I've been talking to Salvadorans here all morning. And the main thing that I'm hearing is strong support for Nayib Bukele and for his policies in El Salvador. To understand why, you have to understand that El Salvador is for a long time one of the most violent countries in the world, and it now has a murder rate lower than that of Canada. Now, the way that that happened, the way that a country got to that point, was by having Bukele suspend a number of constitutional liberties and imprison many thousands, tens of thousands of people in many cases without court hearings, without due due process, but the result in terms of people's daily lives is pretty remarkable in terms of their ability to live freely without fear of the gangs. And those are the sorts of stories that I'm hearing. Now, there's, just to qualify this a little bit, though, it's not just full-throated support for Bukele, though. I'm also hearing from people who do support the security progress that's happened in their country, that they're a little bit wary, a little bit worried of the fact that people are getting deported from the United States to El Salvador, perhaps reflecting their own status as immigrants here in the United States. They want to make sure that there isn't just security in their country, that there's also democracy and transparency. Those are the things that they appreciate about the United States. It's the reason that they came here, and they want to make sure that their own country does not slide into authoritarianism. Chris?
So thank you for that. Maria, you just got back from there. And one of the things that happened today in the Oval Office is the president suggested they'd like to send as many people as possible there, maybe expanding the complex that is that notorious prison. Tell us what you saw when you went.
Well, first of all, Chris, you cannot get into Secot, which is that notorious prison, unless you are given permission by the president. So it's not like here where you make a request to the Department of Corrections and the commissioner, superintendent. No. You get in because President Nayib Bukele says you can get in, which is crazy, right? It also, for the journalists who do get in, it means that you're being used as a kind of prop. What's important to know is that Bukele does call himself a dictator. And for the last several years, protests against Bukele in El Salvador have been non-existent. But now that this is happening, that these people are being removed from the United States and placed in Secot in El Salvador, you have actually seen protests against Bukele happening in San Salvador. So the facade is starting to crack, and it's unclear what the end game is in terms of how Bukele is going to come out of this. But it should.
Amber Owen says, dude, Trump thinks this is the way to suppress the vote permanently. That's a good point. You send enough people to El Salvador, you lose a lot of voters.
Frighten every single person who's watching this. One, the racism is outright. It's because this gentleman is Salvadoran that they're like, oh, we have nothing to do with him. It's just outright, like, we don't need another Latino. We don't need to return him to this country. But two, for any American citizen who has family behind bars, this needs to be concerning to you, because the president is saying, we will soon be taking you from the United States to Secot. And by the way, there is martial law in El Salvador, which means there is no due process, Chris. There is no one visiting anyone in any prison in El Salvador.
We keep using the word notorious, but what is, again, I know you weren't able to get in, but what do we know about the Salvadoran prison complex?
I mean, the whole idea, the images that, by the way, President Nayib Bukele from El Salvador, he's an expert, he's a marketer. That's why you're seeing these videos that are being made within minutes of people being transported out of the United States. The conditions there, it's hard for us to know because we don't have access, but the interviews that I did with women who served time, you're starving, you're hungry, lights are on 24 hours a day, you have no protection from the guards or other prisoners, the dehumanization that we are all a witness to. And right, we are being told that the reason why they should be dehumanized is because they are horrible criminals. But we know because of data that actually the majority of the people who were frankly taken from the United States without any due process, they were not deported. Deported means you have seen a judge. These people were just simply taken, put on a plane, and moved. They have no due process whatsoever, no access to visitors, no access to lawyers. And so everybody has to ask themselves, is this what we want for American citizens? Is this what we want for people who came to this country looking for refuge? And it's a question that everyone needs to contemplate now.
So on the other side...
Dude, Trump doesn't give a shit about asylum or refuge. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but I'm saying it's a bad thing, but...
of the coin, and many people who were there, President Trump, Kristi Noem, others, were talking about the worst of the worst and the people who should go there. There was even conversations about if you hit an elderly woman with a baseball bat, if you push someone onto a subway, that the worst of the worst should be the people who get sent out of this country. What's in it besides, in this case, $6 million for President Bukele?
Well, that $6 million...
Yeah, I'm going to say that's exactly what it is. It's the money, baby.
Dollars is a lot. Also, President Bukele becomes a part of the international stage right?
He's sitting in the Oval Office.
He's sitting in the Oval Office. He's being treated with a great deal of respect, the way most White House administrations receive foreign presidents. So he gets to elevate his posture. But there is an end game here which we don't know. The United States is not a signatory to International Court of The Hague, but internationally, El Salvador will lose reputation. And this will become, who would have thought that a gentleman from El Salvador named Kilmar would become the litmus test for a constitutional crisis and for the limits of abuse of human rights simply because you were not born in this country.
Maria Hinojosa, I haven't seen you in a while. It's good to have you back. Thank you so much for your reporting. It's much appreciated.
Craziness, bro. We'll see what happens, I guess. Where's the market at? Still in the green. LB says so many Americans voted for this freak show, and I think a lot of them love this. They don't care about one dude named Kilmar. You know, he was not from here. He has, you know, sketchy ties, and maybe he was with them. They don't care. They don't want him here. They couldn't care less. It's sad, but it's true. Ugh, sorry. Do you guys see that Blue Origin sent a bunch of women to space? So who went exactly? I know it was Katy Perry, Gayle King, Lauren Sanchez, who is Bezos's girlfriend.
Okay, I'm going to show you the capsule that we have been training in for the last few days.
They had a train?
Here I am. Seat number 2. Here on the New Shepherd. I think I'm gonna sing. I'm gonna sing a little bit. I gotta sing in space. And these are all of my astronaut girly friends. We are the Taken Up Space crew. Okay, I'm gonna
Liberty.
The incredible privilege of seeing you guys go up, but we didn't get to see what was happening inside the capsule. So why don't we take a look at that video right now?
We haven't seen it.
Whoa.
I want to see it myself.
1, 2, 3, take us space!
Take it up. That's the best they could come up with.
Behind you, look right behind you. Okay, you it up there.
Flynn, I got you. I got you, Flynn. Oh, the moon. You guys, I don't have to tell you. Look at the moon. Look.
Okay.
That's kind of cool.
Look at the moon. Oh my gosh. So much. Whoa, whoa, whoa. That's amazing.
Wow.
Oh, gosh, that's good.
Just, I know, Katie's face says it all right there.
This is the Blue Origin's all-female historic flight crew. They made it to space today, and of course that includes our very own Gayle King. You can see them there getting onto the stage, so let's get you to that news conference happening right now.
Keep clapping for you. I don't know if that would ever get old if I were you guys to hear that I am an astronaut, and an unbelievable thing you guys can now say that you are. We are going to hear from all of you guys in a second, but there are over 10,000 employees here at Blue Origin. There are so many people that have put their heart and soul and their brains into this operation to make it possible to do what you guys did today. And I just want to have a moment. What you guys did, even going out with the parachute individuals that were gathering all the cords.
And in fact, we're getting word now that they are so close, inside of 1 minute, as you hear my voice, T-minus. We're going to listen in now to the sights, the sounds from West Texas.
Vehicle is now on internal power.
So in a moment here, we'll see those, what they call the bit checks, the built-in test checks. As you mentioned, Kristen, inside a capsule, you know, this is like a bridled beast. This.
So who went? Blue Origin all-female flight. New York Times is calling it a stunt.
Got it?
Wow, look at the blue line.
Oh my gosh. Oh my goddess. Wow. Oh my That's our pink moon.
Oh my goddess, that's funny.
Okay. Now it's time to look out, guys.
Can I just get a list of who went? Okay. Carrie Ann Flynn, Katy Perry, Lauren Sanchez, Aisha Bowe, Gayle King, and Amanda Nugent. I don't know who Carrie Ann Flynn is. She's a film producer. A film producer into space exploration, I guess. Katy Perry, singer, Lauren Sanchez. I think that's Jeff Bezos' girlfriend, who's Aisha Bowe. Oh, she's an aerospace engineer. Gotcha. And Amanda Nugent. American social entrepreneur and civil rights activist. She's the CEO of RISE, a non-governmental civil rights organization. Interesting.
This thing wants to take off.
Switch to onboard helium.
Here we go. Good luck and Godspeed, ladies.
There's Jeffy Boy.
Let's launch this
Thrust
rocket.
termination system is armed.
Where'd they go? They just went straight up. They didn't go. They just reached space and then went back down. I'm pretty sure.
T-minus 22 seconds and counting.
Go to internal.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. Command engine start. 2, 1. Ignition.
Crazy. That's pretty crazy.
Liftoff. New Shepard has cleared the tower.
I think they were scared.
You see that building the size of several?
Shut up. Wow. RB Davis says expensive ride, no doubt.
Begin throttle down for Q limiting. Engine response looks good. Max Q, maximum dynamic pressure.
That's crazy.
Mach 1, vehicle is supersonic.
Supersonic.
Engine back up to full throttle.
Supersonic. We have passed through max Q. Maximum dynamic pressure. That's when the vehicle, the stresses between the atmosphere and the speed are at their maximum. So to punch through that is so important. You see the BE3 engines is firing beautifully. You see the
Kind of gives me like butterflies in my stomach, you know?
the stream of steam behind it. Those ladies right now are having an incredible view on their way to space.
Oh, it was only 10 minutes? The whole thing was only 10 minutes?
Passing through 80,000 feet, 1,300 miles per hour. You're going to peak at about 2,300 miles an hour over Mach 3, 3 times the speed of sound. Shortly coming up, we'll have MECO, main engine cutoff. We will turn off the engine, but the two craft, the capsule and the booster, will continue their ascent to space.
Stand by, MECO.
And our...
Louis says even 10 minutes is awesome. So much more than a TV show. I mean, yeah, this is pretty awesome. I'm not going to lie.
There you saw. The main engine is turned off. We're now going to separate the capsule from the booster. And at that point, Kristen, that's when all 6 astronauts are going to start to feel the weightlessness. And shortly thereafter, we're going to let them unbuckle.
And that right there is the most
Was that Kris Kardashian?
critical milestone of this whole ascent. Oprah watching her best friend go to space.
Oh man, Nate, this was, I don't know. I got chills. I got tears in my eyes when I first heard the enormous burst of sound. Yeah. Dr. Mae Jemison is here with us to describe what we just saw with our very own eyes. Our friend, our colleague Gail King, and the rest of the Blue Origin crew heading into space.
So what you saw were tons of high explosives in a controlled explosion that
How much for the cost of this? I have no
held
idea.
them up high, and that's the sound and the rumble, and so it's very visceral. You feel it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think when we watched them until they went out of sight, it was just really exciting because you know how high they are.
Okay, so once they went out of sight, so small that we couldn't see them, were they still going up?
They were still going up.
I can still see them.
They were still going up, and I think main engine cutoff maybe happened about like less than a minute after that. Okay. After we couldn't see them anymore, and then the capsule separated from the main booster. The main booster's going to come back and land.
Yeah. We're gonna pause, Dr. Jemison, and listen here because we can actually hear them on the main feed.
The highest point in flight, well over 345,000 feet, well over the Kármán line.
Wow.
And at this moment, the astronauts have unstrapped from their seats. They are floating. They are weightless. They are experiencing zero-G for the very first time in their lives. And Katy Perry did say that she was going to sing in space. I'm waiting for it.
1 minute warning. 1 minute warning.
So that is Capcom indicating a 1 minute warning for our astronauts to take in those last views before they get buckled back into their seats.
Damn, they were only in space for like 2 minutes.
Both craft are descending already.
She's singing. Can I afford that trip? Hell no, bro. I'm poor. Can't really hear them that well through this one. So this part's falling back down.
Today's actually a really exciting day.
Come on, camera guy.
Copy. All astronauts in seat.
And a great piece of news there. All astronauts are back in their seats. You see the two craft now. That on the bottom, that is the rocket that is screaming back down to Earth. The rocket will beat the capsule to its landing spot, just 2 miles north of where it's taken off from, at the top of the rocket.
That thing's cruising, man.
You see a couple of fins that have popped out. Those are to stabilize the rocket as it comes into land. Shortly thereafter, you will see the drag brakes that deploy that will cut the speed of the rocket in half. And then in the last moments,
and there it is, we can see it from the stage.
There comes the rocket down. It's going to relight its engine. We're going to also see a sonic boom. We're going to hear that shortly here.
And remember, this is something that had never been done before until just a few years ago. Truly the stuff of science fiction that you're about to watch in just seconds.
Damn, that was loud.
Drag brakes. Engine relight.
That's pretty crazy. Damn, it landed on its...
And booster touchdown, welcome home, New Shepard.
Picture perfect landing right there.
Picture perfect landing.
Right on target.
You see that dust kind of creates this dramatic cloud that reveals the beautiful rocket that it's just taken place up to space.
Wow.
And I love the echo across the mountains. Is that what I was hearing there?
That's what you heard. You heard the sonic boom, then you heard the engine relight, and all of that reverberates in this big, beautiful valley in West Texas. All right, shortly here we're waiting to see the drogue parachutes deploy from the crew capsule.
It's just free falling down?
Those are like the guide parachutes. There go the drogue parachutes.
Just free falling right there until those drogues came out.
And then next will be the main
That free falling is kind of nuts, right?
parachutes that get pulled out.
Hear that screaming inside the capsule?
And all 3 parachutes.
Damn, that's a little scary, the free falling. Talk about a roller coaster ride.
And they will slowly inflate.
I know there's a parachute, but they were going pretty quick.
Slowing the capsule to a nice, smooth 10, 15 miles an hour. They are cruising back home.
3 good parachutes.
And I tell you, Kristen, from having gone through all of the simulations, I have gone through all of the training. They put you in the capsule that simulates all of this, including the sounds, and when you hear the motors of the parachutes pop out, that is the best moment in flight.
Because I know Blue Origin does everything they can to make this as safe as possible, and you'll have an impeccable safety record, but it still has to feel really good when you know that you're coming back to Earth with those parachutes fully deployed.
That must be a good view just in and of itself. They were out of their seats for like a minute or two, I think.
And we can see the capsule just over our shoulder here. Going to be landing north and east of the launch pad, coming down softly and beautifully. 500 feet.
And you will see a puff of smoke when it touches down. A puff of dust.
I don't know how much it costs.
Last milliseconds. Air cushion that will kick up the dust. It's a very soft landing despite the sporty perception. There it is.
Whoa.
When it touches down, a puff of dust.
Actually, yes.
That's normal.
A puff of dust, last milliseconds. Air cushion that will kick up the dust. It's a very soft landing despite the sporty perception. There it is.
Wow. Pretty cool.
That's it. I mean, there we are, folks.
Why are the Kardashians there?
Successfully back on Earth. Let me just say, and the caps.
The thing for this historic moment.
That's cool.
Hello and welcome to the launch of New Shepard.
Like that, it just blows my mind. It blows my mind, and I can't.
They already have a whole documentary about it.
Now we are looking at what?
So now the crew, as well as you see Jeff Bezos there, have gone into the safety shelter, and
Should have watched this version. This version's much better.
Of training leading. I have to say.
I might break in. We got
normal. Human spaceflight will never be normal.
It looks like a tough landing, but it isn't. To that point, this flight, because you're basically going straight up and then over the Kármán line and straight back down. Some astronauts, I think you mentioned your mother may have experienced a little sickness up there. You don't in this one because it's just once up and once down. And you get that nice zero-G floating sensation and you buckle back in. You don't have some of the... It's not as extreme.
So do you have an astronaut that you're looking forward to hearing from the most?
It's really hard to pick. Yeah. I have to say I'm a huge Katy Perry fan, so I'd love to see what her feelings are. Also, as a mother, our kids are close in age. What does that feel when you have young children? You saw her get so emotional in her pre-flight interview. Is she still is that still the weighing emotion, or is she still just oh my God, I saw the stars, I saw the curvature of the Earth? What's going to come out of her mouth, but really her heart?
And is that Jeff Bezos out there right by the capsule? Kind of hard to see.
That is correct. That is Jeff Bezos, our founder, on the left, as well as Sarah Knights, our crew member 7. And I just want to thank our viewers for joining us. NS-31, New Shepard's 31st mission to space, our 11th human space flight. From all parts of this flight, for the booster, for the capsule, for our astronauts, a completely successful flight, one of the smoothest flights we've had so far. And we're now
Did look pretty smooth.
Just awaiting the opening of the hatch so we can get some views from our 6 new astronauts.
And I would imagine Lauren Sanchez in seat 1 will be coming out first.
That is correct. They'll go. She's in seat 1, which is next to the left. The left window there. She will go first. And then last in number 6 is Carrie Ann. That is the window on the right.
Side canyon.
You see those vans arriving. Those are friends.
And that's Carrie. Lauren Sanchez on the left. Almost as though the largest windows of any spacecraft.
Is window. Bezos. Turn around.
I want to see him come out.
Good? Okay, here we go.
Here goes Jeff Bezos to open the hatch.
She didn't really close it again. Come on out, guys.
They didn't close the door properly? Or what did he mean by that?
Yeah, of course.
We'll see your babies.
Where are my babies?
They're over here. Go see them.
Where? Oh, we have to go
Right
there. Okay.
Katie!
Thank you. Thank you. Amanda!
That's cool.
Oh my gosh!
I can't believe how quick it is.
I just have to have a moment with the ground. Let me just appreciate the ground for just a second. Thank you, Jesus. Oh my God. That was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
I'm so proud. So proud of you.
Oh, there we go.
Amazing.
What millionaires can do? Millionaires can't do this. Well, I guess they're millionaires. I thought you were talking about Jeff. Only billionaires can make this happen, really.
I'm so proud of you.
We got your
Come right around the bushes here.
Come on. I can't hear
I have no, it's not working. So someone just tell me when we're on. Does anyone have our
My babies.
And
my favorite was, but clearly ecstatic. I don't know about you, Kristen, but my favorite was Lauren coming out and saying, "Where are my babies?"
And I also loved Katy Perry holding a daisy, I believe, and holding the daisy up to the sky after her daughter Daisy. Sweet moment.
With that, let's turn it over to Krista Thompson standing by outside the capsule.
I don't really have words for it.
Oh my God, Lauren, I want to cry just seeing you.
I'm so proud of this crew. Like, I mean, Gail, you know, we were just talking in the capsule, doesn't even have ear piercings. She's so afraid to do anything. And she got in that capsule, and I think, like, it profoundly changed her. I mean, for me, I can't put it into words, but, like, I looked out the window, and we got to see the moon.
And it was pink. Was it pink?
Full moon. It wasn't pink, but it was almost full. And Earth looked so. It was so quiet. It was just quiet. And
is it what you expected?
No.
Better.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, to some extent, it had to be. It was still the Earth, right? All right, Kev Chad doesn't like this.
I don't think you can just. But then. Because
capsule, but I can tell so already. Yeah.
Oh. To me, this I did. I'm like, I don't. Joy. 6. How much it's going to change me, and I want to thank the blue team. I mean. To everyone here.
I love you. Go be with your family. But
to process and download what just happened to me.
Well, get on in here, Amanda. Someone that can now articulate exactly how Lauren is feeling. Lauren being so candid about overcome with emotion. How are you feeling? I know, Amanda, this has been a dream of yours, a long-awaited dream, and now it is finally official. You are an astronaut. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. You know, I usually have nice words to say, but in this moment, I just want all survivors to know that you can heal. No dream is too wild, and that if it's so...
I think she works in sexual assault stuff. That's why she said survivors.
Wild out there, like going to space, you can absolutely make it through, and it can absolutely be possible.
You mentioned to us prior to going up, you said that you needed to go to space to heal. I know you're only a few minutes removed from this incredible experience. Do you feel healed?
You know,
That's a tough question to answer.
Had a zero-G indicator that I didn't know if I would bring, and I ended up bringing it.
What's the zero-G indicator?
And explain for the folks at home that don't know what that means, what it is that you're holding.
Yes, the zero-G indicator is something all astronauts have that floats once you hit space, lets you know you're there. I brought a promise that I wrote to myself. I've talked about that.
And share for what is this right here?
Yes, and this one I didn't know if I would bring, but I ended up bringing it and floating it, and it's the hospital van from the day.
That's sad.
I got to honor her today, and I'm so grateful to the thousands of people, the engineers, the scientists, just everyone who has made this a reality.
And you also have written here, I know that you had this on your laptop, right?
Yes, this is my zero-G indicator, a promise I made to myself that if I were to pause my astronaut dreams and fight for rights, that one day I would return to her.
And it says, never, never give up. Well, those dreams are no longer on hold. You are finally an astronaut. Congratulations. Enjoy this moment with your family, and thank you.
get on over. I am so
floating.
I
can't believe it. I cannot believe it.
I'm so proud of you. And I know that I speak for the collective because you have been so honest. You've been so vulnerable. And I spoke to your best friend prior to you taking off. And I asked her why it was so important for you to do this. And she said, she said, so she didn't have to hear you say, I wish I would have done that.
So true.
But now, Gayle King, you are officially an astronaut. How do you feel?
I still can't accept that word, but I will say I can't even believe what I saw. When somebody calls this a ride, this was not a ride. What happened to us was not a ride. This was a bona fide friggin' flight. And our instructor, we were so well prepared. So every noise we heard, we knew. But the flight instructor said that I am her best success story. Why? Because she's never had somebody go through the course who's terrified of flying. Everybody who's gone through the course is somebody that it's been a lifelong dream. They wanted to do it. So she said, I'm her best success story. I'm so proud of me right now. I still can't believe it. I still can't believe it.
I was just going to say, prior to the launch, you said that you would be so proud of yourself if you went through with this. And you did. What was the best part, Gayle?
It's oddly quiet when you get up there. It's really quiet and peaceful. And you look down.
There's no sound in space, right? Why is everybody so shocked by that? I guess you don't realize how quiet it actually is.
Down at the planet, you think that's where we came from. And to me, it's such a reminder about how we need to do better, be better. Do better, be better human beings.
And what do you mean by that?
Processing. Well, it's so nasty and so vitriolic nowadays. And I mean, if everybody could experience that peace that we had up there and the kindness and what it takes to do what we did, all the people that it took to get us up there and get us back safely, I'll never, ever, ever forget. And when we were up there, have you talked to Katie yet?
I have not.
Okay, when we were up there, after zero G is very difficult. You know, all the training about this is how you get in the chair and this. I look like a friggin' moose getting in the chair. It was like, just let me get in the chair. Let me get the seatbelt on. But, you know, we had a very do this.
How would you describe it?
It's very difficult because you're floating. But the best part was when we got back in our seats after zero G's, Katie sang "What a Wonderful World."
She did?
Isn't that nice?
Oh, come on.
She sang "What a Wonderful World." I see
Did you just all
dreams.
start
Oh,
crying?
yes.
Oh.
Because we'd been asking her to sing all the time, and she wouldn't. And then, because everybody said, sing roar, sing fireworks. And she said, it's not about me. I wanted to talk about the world.
Wow.
I know, isn't that nice? You got to ask her about that.
That's really special. And when Lauren got out, she was overcome by emotion for a lot of reasons, and rightfully so. But she spoke to the group and how close you guys have all. I'll tell you something right now. You are officially the crier. Katie.
Of the group.
No, you're not the crier of the group.
Feeler of the group.
No, you are not.
I'm crier.
I'm going to tell you something right now. You are officially an astronaut.
Thank you so much.
How do you feel?
I feel super connected to love. So connected to love. I think this experience has shown me you never know how much love is inside of you, like how much love you have to give, and how loved you are until the day you launch.
We had these incredible shots of Daisy watching you as the rocket, it'll make me cry, as the rocket's going up, and she was so proud. Just kept saying, Mommy, Mommy. And I know you'll feel the same way when you watch it. And you brought a real life Daisy up.
That's
it was
right.
important for you, not only because it's your daughter's name, but why else was that important to bring it?
Daisies are common flowers, but they grow through any condition. They go through cement, they go through cracks, they go through walls. They are resilient. They are powerful, they are strong, they are everywhere. Flowers are...
That was cool, honestly. I enjoyed that. Trip was guaranteed to be successful with celebrity on board. I mean, I don't think no matter who's on board, they don't want to crash. I mean, I thought that was cool. No hate from me. Sam thinks that was cool. I'm just shocked about how fast it was. Like, they were up and back in like 15 minutes less. Louise says they really felt it wonderful. Yeah, it was. They were all very inspiring. Any big news today? Chev, we went over the news today. You got to go back and start to stream over when either now or when it posts. Because I'm about to wrap it up, to be honest with you. I got some stuff I need to do this evening. An entire lifetime's worth of emissions for a 10 to 15 minute trip. All right, Jack. Stop being so smart and intellectual about it, okay? We're being a little bit more spiritual about it here right now. Jack. All right, folks. Thank you all for tuning in. Lickman Live is tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. I hope to see you all there. Take care.